So the class that I'm planning to do this with is Biology 111, which, if you're outside the biology department, you know it's a large enrollment lecture and lab class for biology majors. So it's mostly freshmen, mostly biology majors, but a smattering of other people. It's required for varieties. It has no prerequisites. Its enrollment is sort of 300 or 400 students. It's been largely a sort of classic lecture class. And so what I want to draw, sort of schematically, is a sense of how the students break up their time, what we spend our time on now, and then how I'm hoping when I flip in the classroom in the fall, things will transform. So that what the time the students spend doing various things. This is sort of a rough schematic. And so the idea is basically now, if you look, there's three main components of the course. There's lecture, which meets 3 times 50 minutes per week, roughly speaking. Then there's lab, which is 1 times 3 hours. So 3 hours. They meet all students have a 3-hour lab. And then there's some sort of unknown homework time, which is theoretically supposed to be about 12 hours, so on the order of 12 hours a week. Right? It's usually 3 hours for every sort of credit hour you got. Don't really know what that is, but that's sort of what the time is. This is something that especially freshman students are not aware of. They don't realize that that's supposed to be out there. And also, many of them make use of it, but not necessarily effectively. So currently, the way things work is that the lecture is sort of mostly content. And then there's a little bit of application. Right, so some problem solving and the like. But it's mostly content. In the lab, because my course is really all about what you can do with what you learn, rather than just a bunch of biology facts, the lab ends up being mostly application and a little bit of sort of what you call wet lab, which has been effective for many years. Applications, so we use software simulations and problem solving and things like that. And that's been effective over the years at getting the students to learn the material. They can do good problem solving things when it comes to the exam. The problem is it's not amazingly motivating for the students. The students actually want to do biology in biology labs, not pencil and paper and work on computers. This has gotten varied over the time, but for the most part, because I'm really focused on having them learn how to apply things, there's been much less wet lab, I think, than I would have been happy with. And then homework, well, homework is sort of a mixed bag. There's probably a little bit of reading, some amount of that. There's a certain amount of, let's see, there's probably, they spend some time writing their lab reports. And then there's a tiny little bit of application. Recently I've added some online homework. And then there's this sort of unknown, which varies from student to student. And I think part of the trouble with the freshman is not knowing exactly what to do with that time in a way that's effective. What actually tends to happen, I think, a lot of times is that because reading is what worked in high school, if they do poorly on my first exam, they sort of expand their reading. They read a lot more, but that's, I think, in my class, that won't be very effective because they need to do more practice problems. But there are some resources for that. So what I want to do, so in the fall 2013, the mission is that, what I've been working on this semester with a bunch of colleagues at MIT is to put together a MOOC, a massively open online course version of freshman biology. We are doing this on an incredibly crash schedule. We have a huge team. It is an unbelievably enormous amount of work. My brain is completely fried at this point, so I'll do my best when I answer questions. But we launched early this month, and it's an emergency every 15 minutes. In fact, the fact that I'm not looking at my email now probably means that my colleagues are having to cover for me. So I don't recommend it, making it a MOOC. I mean, unless you have an enormous amount of time and you're not trying to do it sort of live. It's a heroic amount of work. It's a great thing that we're going to produce, but it's a ton of work. We're trying to do some really innovative things, but that means you have to fill out time. So what I'm hoping to do is to move so that the homework time, so there'll be a little bit of reading, right? There'll be some lab reports, same old thing. There'll be a little more application, because the book includes some really nice problem-solving things. And then there'll be content. I'm going to move a lot of the content down into homework. And there's a couple of things that came out of what Mike was saying and what other people were saying, is that it's partly this, there's the question about, are you making it a course and a half? Part of it is, I think, that they actually haven't been working all that hard outside of class, and so they probably, and I don't mean, oh, so they should because, you know, some sort of punitive way to look at it, but because they haven't been making effective use of that time, and they could be making effective use of time. And another way to look at the sort of recorded lectures is the following. Some years ago, I started posting online on iTunes U lecture audio. And at one point, I asked my students, what do you get out of coming to class that you don't get from the lecture audio? And what do you get out of the lecture audio that you don't get out of coming to class? If I got that backwards, so two things, right? And so what they said, what they got out of coming to class, because it's a big lecture, it's about motivation, the ability to ask questions, and it seemed to be sort of less particularly tangible things, although some of the content, so that it was regular time to deal with content. And the thing that they got out of the lecture audio was the ability to say, can you say that again? Can you say that again? Can you say that again? And also so that so Ellie could ask him to talk about one part, and somebody else could ask about another part. And so they also could do things like listen to it while they were doing dishes or whatever, that sort of thing. And it gave them a chance to have things repeated for them in a really customized way. And so what I realized is that the online audio is not a poor substitute for being in class, but in many ways a better thing, because they can access just what they need, and when they have trouble with it, see it again and again. And so there's things that you really can't do in a sort of ordinary lecture that I would have given. And so I'm thinking, we'll see how it goes, but there's some really nice advantages to this. There are some disadvantages as well, but we can talk about that. But what that means is that lab can become less application and more wet lab. I can. I'm going to try to keep it, they're not exactly the same size, but it's mostly the same. But we can do more real sort of biology things in the biology class, which would be really quite nice.
Could you give us a wet lab example?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So
some of us are.
I know, I beg your pardon. So the distinction is between, say, working through practice problems on paper, or using a computer simulation, and preparing a protein from bacteria, or like isolating enzymes or something, or preparing DNA, doing sort of a hands-on lab like you might have had in high school biology, where you actually look at some cells under a microscope, that sort of a thing. And then because the content I can do, this thing can be less content and much more application. So if I kept my bars all the same size, the notion is that I'm moving some of the stuff from the lab into the lecture, those applications and the problem-solving sessions, and then frees me up to do other things, and also just delivers content in a way that actually might be more effective. And my current sort of tentative plan is to have a cycle of Monday, Wednesday, Friday lectures, where something like, where every Wednesday will be a sort of, they'll watch the lectures the week before. Wednesday will be a fill-in for whatever lecture stuff that they might have missed or that they have difficulty with. Friday would be some applications and problem solving, and then Monday will be a test. So rather than having a couple of a small number of big exams, I'll have a large number of small exams to kind of keep people along. In the hope, again, because part of my job as teaching freshmen is to teach them how to go to college, and that's to sort of keep up with the material. So that's the mission. A couple of things that people raise are questions about how you make sure that people have actually done their homework. Right? And that's one of the things that, and there's two ways to do that. One is to make classroom activities that work to some extent if people are prepared, although you don't want to play into that. But one of the things that, it turns out the way the MOOC is structured is that, rather cleverly, in between segments of lectures broken up into little pieces, between them are little multiple choice questions, which if any of you use clickers is sort of like having a little clicker question every few minutes. And what I can do, because of the way the MOOC is structured, I can give a due date for those, and so oblige people to have watched the lectures and answered, at least tried the questions by a certain time, so I can be fairly certain that they will be prepared when they come in. But that at the moment, this is as detailed as it gets. That's the hope and the sort of the plan. Over the summer, I have to sort of plan out all of the details. But the thought is that there are many places that it came from. But one of them is there are many days, especially in a big lecture class, where I feel like I'm kind of reading stuff into the record. I'm just saying this. I kind of feel like that could be much better done on their own time, in a way where they could skip over the parts that they get, focus on the parts that they don't get. And embedding questions in the lecture is a very effective way, I think, to get them to understand what are they supposed to be getting from this lecture. Well, not only just to make sure they watch it, but also to help them as a guide. And not just to force them to pay attention in a punitive way, but again, also, you can watch a section of video, and what are you supposed to get out of it? And so you have a series of guiding questions, and these are more or less the same thing. That is to get a sense of what the take-home message is, so they come to class prepared. So that's the sketch of what I have. Questions, comment, discussion? Yeah.
How many students are going to be in the class?
There'll be 350-ish.
So that's a lot of labs.
Yes. So I have graduate teaching assistants. The way that works is the lecture's everybody, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And the labs are, there's sections of 24 students, so there'll be, 15 sections of lab topography, something like that. It's an empire.
How will the content, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, please.
How will the content that you're providing now through this MOOC differ from the kind of content, the ways you were providing content in your recorded lectures and so the things you were doing before? So this content is being delivered in a much less interactive way than I would do it if I was in Lipke Auditorium, where I usually do my thing. So in Lipke Auditorium, we have lots of questions and think, pair, share, and a lot more interactive. But that's because a plain old straight lecture is not enormously effective. I think this is another modification of a plain old straight lecture, that it will be more effective than, say, watching just 15 minutes of straight video, 50 minutes of straight video, because it's broken up into questions. So the content will be delivered in a more traditional way, I suppose, a straight lecture, all of interest presentation. The kind of things, the topics that I'll cover will be more or less the same. If that's what you mean. Yeah, so similar content delivered
Right.
in sort of shorter segments with little questions that would replicate, in some sense, what you do now when you break a lecture with that clicker questions.
I think that's exactly right. That's really true. Yeah.
Brian, what about the labs, where they're do those labs virtually instead of?
No, the labs are all physical. So the thing is, the only part they really change, well, just say more carefully, the lab have always been physical, and sort of always will. I mean, it's very difficult, especially, I mean, if I made the wet lab all go away, then you could do this all online. But that's not really what I'm after in terms of teaching biology. My aim is not to make an online class. I actually don't think that would be a really good way to teach freshman biology. I mean, it would be better than nothing, but the way I teach it, I would much rather you come in person to those things. And also, the stuff that goes on in lecture, I feel like, again, I'm not aiming to eventually move the class totally online. I think there's things that learning to solve problems and applying things, and applying to pretty good case studies is the kind of thing that's best done in a group of people, and sort of with a more human interaction than you would get on an online.
That, are you using clickers in your classroom?
I am using in the current model. I use clickers, and I will continue in the new one. Yeah, they've been quite useful. But yeah.
How frequently do you give exams, and how much space during a week does their exam taking occupy?
So in the current mode, I have 3 hourly exams over the course of the semester, and so they'll burn up an entire lecture. What I'm imagining doing, I think of creatively how to structure this. My imagination is that sort of my Monday exam is going to be sort of 20 minutes of some sort of lecture activity and then 30 minutes of quiz. So the idea is that what I'm thinking about is my classic exam, they give sort of 4 big fat questions. And what I'm going to do is so I have 3 to 12 questions over the whole semester and break it up into 12 mini exams spread over the 12 weeks. Okay. And I'm hoping that when I split them up, I'll take between 20 and 30 minutes of class time to do it. So I'll have some extra time as well before the exam to do something, which I haven't exactly figured out what to be yet. Okay. Does that answer your question?
It does, because I came here because of the blended learning and the flipping part.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, some of your insight in terms of, I just gave a midterm and the students were shocked because they've got raw scores, the distribution is large, which is good for me to be able to just
right. You can try to be easily.
Right, but they're having heart attacks.
Yeah.
And I think had I employed a larger number of smaller testing increments, they would have kept up and they wouldn't feel so behind halfway through the semester.
I'm thinking that there's a lot of bonus features that come out of that. I've talked to some of my students, and they say, be careful, do not call them quizzes, because no one will take them seriously.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call them tests. But, and make it clear they're a big part of your grade. But it's funny, because I've been moving that way, because what I started doing is, for early on, because again, it's also freshmen, I would give them, like in the second week of class, like a thing I called a survey, which was like an exam question. And just to see where they stand and kind of give them feedback on it. And lately what I've been doing is calling it a sort of, a survey again, but making it more clear that what I do is you'll get 10 points towards the course for doing it, but I'm going to write on it your sort of like pseudo grading. Like if this had been an exam question, how many points would you got? To help to get people sort of thinking about what my exams are going to be like. Because no matter how many times I show them last year's exam, and I tell them it's not going to be multiple choice and a whole bunch of things, they still don't prepare effectively for it. And so I'm hoping that by having, that means an early exam, the frequent exams means an early exam, which I think would make a big difference. And frequent exams also helps people keep up, probably reduces their anxiety along the way, because it's not these big monsters. So I'm thinking that there are a variety of positive outcomes from that. The problem of what to do with the first half of class is going to be tricky, because people are going to be sort of stressed out and anxious about the exam. And are they going to be really listening? I've actually thought about using it as a way to do some review, but I want to do it cleverly in a way where I'm not sort of just giving answers. But I haven't thought that one all through.
Can I just follow up?
Sure.
Blackboard has the capacity to deliver the exams, and I've tried them in the past, but I've discarded that because there have been some challenges with it. They've been timed out early or something, and all these types of problems. And I just can't do that. Have you found a way to use Blackboard to do the assessments, these incremental assessments?
So that's a slightly larger and more complicated and nasty, ugly thing. Because it turns out when you do these techno things, your headaches multiply by several orders of magnitude. Because they don't, especially when you then, because we're having the true nightmares when you disperse a course to the entire world, right, where people have an enormous number of different kinds of computers and platforms and browsers and all that kind of thing. Especially with a large class, technology adds a huge amount to sort of the email that you get. I couldn't get onto Blackboard. I lost my password. I went in at 11:59. It was due at noon, and I got timed out. There's just sort of this endless series of questions like that. Some of them I hope to address with sort of FAQs and sort of careful design. But no, when I do my exams, they're going to be pencil and paper. Also, because we're just so many people in a humongous room, and also for some cheating issues, we won't administer on a computer, and also, well, for a variety. Sometimes you have to draw things, which is sort of a pain. And so, yeah, we'll do them all. The exams will be pencil and paper. And the evaluation stuff, what I've ended up doing is making it not worth an enormous number of points, and having to go to lots of things where you have to do 5 out of 6. And that just takes a sort of level of grief associated with computer glitches. Makes that less. Yeah.
If there were assessment labs or more of the assessment labs at UMass that was proctored with you that maybe had a capacity of 35, 50 students, would you send students or make an appointment to have them done in a lab like that where you were, it was on Blackboard?
Almost, in my case, no, because you probably could never give me enough capacity to do it. That's it. Because the other thing is you have to make up a different exam for each of those different sections. Yeah, for a class as large as mine, it would never be practical, unless you had 300 computers. Actually, even then, the thing is, somebody will be sitting by a computer that dies, or locks up, or melts, or something, and basically a pencil always works. And so, that's not even true. Yeah, I have spare pencils, but that's a lot. I can carry spare pencils. Right. And so I don't mean to say don't do it, but there's certain things where you have to take the pressure off. It's complicated to use the computer stuff in evaluation. Right.